to Soundwave TV. We're here with the guys from Fucked Up. How are you guys going?
We're doing really well, thank you.
Yeah, doing
much.
awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So, you had a bit of a mystical moment today.
Yeah, actually, at first I met today. I had like the continuation of an ongoing mystical experience, but I was like, we played yesterday, and Duff McKagan played yesterday, and I walked by and I saw him in his dressing room, and I'm like, I gotta go talk to him because Guns N' Roses, huge band for me, but he played in all these unbelievable Seattle punk bands like the Farts, the Fastbacks, the Silly Killers. He didn't play in Soldier. I thought he did, but I asked him yesterday, Johnny. He didn't.
What would be your introduction to punk and hardcore records for people?
Well, since we're in Australia, which I think is one of the overlooked birthplaces of punk rock, because
absolutely, the Saints, man.
Saints at 75.
Oh my God.
That's like the same time as
the Saints, Colored Balls in the early 70s.
Early
Sharpie
Balls,
scene.
and I don't know, XL Capri's, my city of Sydney, I miss the warmth of you. And your church steeple.
So we should stay in our own backyard.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
honestly, like if you are from Australia and you have not looked into the incredible punk rock past of this place, you are missing out, my friend.
And you know what? It goes all the way from the beginnings, like the simultaneous beginnings of punk music, to everything that's happening in the 90s. There's this massive scene happening in Australia as well.
A couple of bands have been saying that you guys are basically 1 degree of separation connected to almost everyone on this tour. Who are your sort of closest bands?
Oh man, Polar Bear Club, because we did this tour with them last time. But like Wade from Gallows, who was in Alexa on Fire, is like one of our really good friends. Cancer Bats, we like grew up.
Liam's a dude.
Yeah, Liam actually
The
played
whole gang.
drums in this band Urban Blight for a minute.
Yeah, we went on tour with.
They went on
ages
tour
ago.
with.
Yeah.
Danko Jones. Danko is like an old hardcore kid from Toronto, and like
That's awesome.
yeah, and we grew up with like seeing Danko Jones as like the coolest live band in the 90s, and now we're on tour with them. It's awesome.
Sick of It All, I don't think we've ever particularly played with Sick of It All, but we played with the Cro-Mags a bunch of times.
And Craig
Satari has
in
been in the Cro-Mags.
And Straight Ahead, which is Craig Satari's old band, is one of my favorite straight-edge hardcore bands of all time.
That's one of the best hardcore records.
One of the best
from
hardcore
New York
records.
City ever.
He wouldn't. I was trying to tell Craig Satari that, and he would not hear it.
You wouldn't have a
He
bar.
was like, "You're out of your mind. The 7-inch is better." And I'm like, "The 7-inch is awesome, but the LP is like a masterpiece."
Do you feel like you're almost kind of studying for a PhD in punk rock almost? You could be like doctorate.
We don't have one yet, then we have really wasted a lot of time.
My
and money.
goal is like to find a school dumb enough to let me teach a class about punk rock.
I like that.
Somebody in England teaches a whole course on the history of punk music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or might even no. It's probably at NYU or something like that.
Who is it?
But she's an English
Is it
person.
someone cool though?
It was a writer. It was like a writer for Sounds or something like that, or NME from the late 70s. And
Oh,
she teaches a course
who
now.
else does one?
So it's awesome.
The guy from Pill. What's his name? Baz or
John
something.
Lydon?
No, yeah. This guy Johnny Rotten, you know? No, Baz I think does one too.
A lot of old hardcore kids on this tour, actually.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things is like punk rock and hardcore were this weird cultural explosion where like so many people that wound up doing interesting things come from it. Like Jim Jarmusch was like an old punk dude. We just did Anthony Bourdain. Do you know that guy?
Yeah, of course.
We were on his TV show.
So he hung out with Richard Hell and the
He was like-
Voidoids.
yeah, and he's
all
like
these
he's
other
dropping
people.
science on like all sorts of like
The New York Dolls.
yeah, like New York Dolls, like talking about getting Johnny Thunder's food when he was too strung out to get.
And then like punk with that, the people themselves went all these places, but punk, the idea, went all these other places. And you had like Andy Warhol going to see the Clash, and then you had like Allen Ginsberg in the New York hardcore scene and shit like that. Like
but I think like I don't know if Andy Warhol going to the Clash. I wouldn't pick that as a punk highlight. That's like a punk.
But that's the kind of crossover thing that happens where it's just actually it's always pegged as a subculture, but it's one of the greatest and most significant mass movements of music.
Yeah, I would say that and hip hop were certainly these weird paradigm shifts for music where like and so many people were drawn to it. Rick Rubin, Def Jam, the first two records on Def Jam were Rick Rubin's band Hose, which are a hardcore band.
Interesting.
Yeah, Def Jam started as a punk label.
What do you think the essence of it was? We were talking to like Jesse and Adam D from Killswitch the other day about what you know what hardcore is.
Oh,
It's like
and our friends,
Our friend Mikey Flynn is on tour with Killswitch
Yeah,
Engage, and he
friends
was in
wrote
an
for Killswitch
old
Engage.
Western Mass hardcore band called The Prowl.
That's great. That's
And
another one.
he was in Out Cold too, which are a legendary band from Boston.
Legendary
They've been
Boston.
around since like 1989.
It was probably just people being galvanized for the first time because the means of production were in the hands of youth. So it allowed the culture to spread independently from corporations and major labels and all this sort of stuff. Like, you, for the first time, to be a band, you didn't have to sign to a label and do all the usual
You didn't have a big
rigmarole.
expensive
No,
production
you could
value
make a
to it, yeah.
zine. You could like make a tape. You could,
Yeah.
and it was like that was like the first time that had happened in rock music. Like where you really like there were some garage bands putting
Yeah,
out
yeah.
singles and like but they were doing it to an end. Like,
Yeah.
They were trying to become mainstream bands.
They were eventually you
Yeah.
want to get signed and
Yeah.
eventually get a gold toilet.
Whereas
and
like
eventually all that
like
stuff.
punk, like the Desperate Bicycles first, but then all these other bands, tiny band scene in Melbourne too comes to mind. We're like, no, we want this. We don't want that.
We don't
Like-
need that.
And that's like, and it's
Yeah.
funny because like, this is all I want. And like, I don't want to be in a stadium band because I don't like stadium bands. I like the bands that. Like the bands that we get to hang out with and the bands we get to talk about and like all those old punk bands. Like I wanted to be in a position to one day. Well, I guess if I was meeting Duff McKagan, it means I was hanging out with stadium bands. But I wanted to be in a.
Although Duff McKagan's Loaded have played like a whole
Oh yeah,
range
absolutely.
of venues.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
no. But I meant like, but just like when I was a
Duff.
kid. When I was a kid,
Oh, dude.
he was in Guns N' Roses.
There's a perfect example of a person that started in punk and ended up in,
Yeah.
in this sort of kind of important place for pop music or rock music.
And he did so much to like expose people to punk because like
well, when they were
when Guns N'
covering
Roses,
the Dead Boys
and they
and-
did "Ain't It Fun" and the
Yeah.
Damned on that Spaghetti incident. That was like as a kid getting into punk rock. It's like, oh, these bands.
It's nice when your favorite bands actually educate you and say, well, I'm into this, and
Yeah.
maybe you should check it out.
Yeah.
And then you get to sort of broaden their
Well, I think
ears and all that kind
and
of
I think
shit.
like now because we have access to every song ever written whenever we want. Context is so important, and having people like steer you towards things is
Yeah,
so
definitely.
important.
Well, it's like you used to have a cool older brother or,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
You
and
still
don't have
kind of
to
do
hunt.
because like
Yeah.
We are your cool older brother, Australia.
we're not cool. We're your nerdy older brother that
just
still lives
gave
in the
you a
basement and
lot
smells
to
like
chew
weed,
on.
and mom hates him.
Yeah.
But now I know that he's not at fault. How could I hold him responsible? So what
You guys have done a pretty intensive collaboration. You've done a lot of collaborations.
Yeah.
What makes a great collaboration?
I think for us, it's something weird.
Yeah.
It's always like it's getting
It's
someone.
a surprise?
Yeah, it's always like trying to get someone in the studio who you've never worked
It's
with.
that person that you don't expect something
Yeah.
to possibly happen with, and that's like the whole MO of Fucked Up, whether or not we ever wanted it to be, is combining two things that theoretically aren't supposed to make sense. So like all the melody and all the sort of pretension of one half of Fucked Up versus being so grounded and so unilaterally like punk and hardcore in the other sense. So there's like melodic guitars and gruff vocals, or there's a shoegazy part, but it's trapped in this really fast-sounding, like punk aggressive song. So when we collaborate with people, it should never really make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, some of
It's
our
alchemy.
earliest collaborations were what, like probably live. We're just like had our friend come and sing with
Or
us, or like
Jim Jarmusch.
Jim Jarmusch talking on our
Yeah,
record.
the film director talking on the record.
So do you feel inspired? You're going to go back into the studio and like bring all this energy
I
back
don't know,
into
like
it?
the record I want to write this time, I'm trying to writing, and I don't know how the rest of the band feels. I want it to be more kind of bittersweet.
Yeah?
I don't want to. I want it to be like kind of like about being in this position, knowing that you've gotten to like everything you ever wanted, but kind of witnessing the purity of what you came from, dying behind you and stuff like that. So that's what I hope the next record.
That's an interesting poetic story.
Well,
to
it's like a weird
explore.
thing. Like
Yeah.
we live in a point now where there's no one's pure, no one's chaste anymore. There's no more fugazis. Like everyone's somehow touched by a corporation in some way, and it's like, that's a reality. But at the same time, it's like you kind of yearn for that purity.